Hey everyone, welcome back to FPL Fran. Today's video is going to be a very unique video. It's going to be actually looking ahead of time and why you should actually consider a certain chip strategy direction and consider it at least why you should change your moves starting from game week 11 this week, which is why I've made this video. Free at 18 is about covering the blank game week that Brentford have between Man City. Around that time of year, Man City will be heading towards the Club World Cup and playing in that competition. That will create a blank game week in 18. This is already confirmed. And the likelihood is that 80% chance, based on, let's say, fixture planners such as Ben Crellin, that it will be rescheduled into a double game week in game week 20. So this means that City would have two fixtures in game week 20, and so would Brentford, of course. And that one fixture additional would be the replaying of the match that was supposed to be played on game week 18, Man City versus Brentford. Why this is so interesting is because over the next few weeks, we have to be considering whether we're going to be reinvesting into Man City and Brentford players. And we don't want to invest into too many of them ahead of blank game week 18, because that would obviously force us to make transfers on game week 18 and therefore also make transfers again in game week 20 if the double game week is to happen. So what I would say is if we get any confirmation at all this week of, let's say, game week 20 being a double, I think it's actually very, very valid even from this game week to start considering how you should make some moves to address that future double game week in game week 20. And why I think this is interesting is because this week is a nice week to actually jump on to Man City assets, right? They have a perfect fixture, one of the best fixtures, because Bournemouth are one of the worst teams in the league right now. You have the chance to play at home versus Bournemouth, and this is a good chance to, for example, jump back into Alvarez or to even jump onto a City defender this week. If you're, let's say, owning someone like Trippier and you actually want to sell Trippier, this could be a nice avenue to move on to, let's say, someone like Guardiola or Walker. So let's just start with, of course, the two teams and why you should consider some of their assets. I think the first team, of course, is going to be Man City. As I talked about, Man City versus Bournemouth means that there is an opportunity to invest into City players this week. It's not just even someone like Alvarez who's super popular, but it's just the idea that, for example, why not go into someone like Guardiola, as I said, away from Trippier, or even Walker if you have more confidence that Walker has really good minutes, or Stones, for example, who's now fully fit and has played the last two games in the league. Of course, diminished minutes versus Brighton, but much more playing as a center back in the recent match as well. The other option, of course, is to go into someone like Foden as well, where if you think about it, of course, he's actually had really good minutes for City this season. However, his underlying stats are very, very poor, I would say, compared to years past. And you might be considering, of course, that Foden isn't a very serious pick. But if you're, let's say, tired of owning a pick like, let's say, Bowen, and you actually want an upgrade per se, I think Foden can be an interesting opportunity just because you're jumping onto a great fixture here. And even though City have slightly average fixtures, you still know that Foden's minutes are rather secure at this point in time. So he can still be a pick that you can actually back going forwards. And in terms of Guardiola, of course, it's a chance to, of course, improve your defense, which all our defenses are very weak in game week 11. So an opportunity to do so. And if you, let's say, own Solanke this week, I mean, moving towards Alvarez will probably force you to have, let's say, a weaker team in game week 18, but of course, make your team incredibly strong in the short term because Solanke to Alvarez is such a huge upgrade. I mean, they're facing each other this week. And of course, we don't have many expectations for Solanke, if we're being honest. So that is the first thing in terms of City. The second team, of course, is going to be this Brentford team with Mbeumo. And Mbeumo is someone that we probably want to be considering to invest into as soon as this week, because the reality, I think, is we probably missed a boat in terms of understanding how truly important, how talismanic Mbeumo is from an FPL point of view. And I think if you're, let's say, owning a West Ham asset this week, there is a serious consideration to say, why not move James Ward-Prowse or Bowen back into Mbeumo and enjoy this really good home fixture versus West Ham, who actually have shown up to be a very, very poor defensive team so far. So why not target this West Ham team? Understand that the Liverpool and Arsenal fixtures are very tough, but also knowing that Mbeumo is a great perma hold, right? And there's no reason to really jump off of Mbeumo. Now, if you own, let's say, players like Diaby or Mitoma, who are a bit cheaper, I don't think you necessarily need to jump back straight onto Mbeumo. Game week 14 would be probably the next best opportunity to jump onto him, or even something like game week 13 if you want to hop off of Diaby after that Fulham versus home game. So that is something that you can consider, right? How soon do we go back to Mbeumo? If you want to move into players like Mbeumo in the future, and Alvarez and Haaland, and even maybe other City picks, then actually you're going to be having 4 players ahead of that blank, and that's going to weaken your team for that blank game week. Another thing too to consider is a lot of players will be leaving towards AFCON and the Asian Cup in game week 21. And what is the impact of that in terms of FPL? The impact of that is such that Son and Hwang, Salah and Mbeumo will all be players who are unlikely to be involved in Game Week 21 and also unlikely to be involved in Game Week 22 because that's where the competition will run. And we're probably going to be actually transferring out most of these players out of our teams until, let's say, they return from AFCON or from Asian Cup. And what that means is that on Game Week 20, some of your transfers might have to be geared around, moving out of Salah, moving out of Mbumo, moving out of Son. And then, of course, you have to continue to do that transfer out for all these players in Game Week 21 as well. That will sort of reduce the strength of your transfers in terms of Game Week 20 and sort of also makes it interesting to see whether you should actually free hit on 18. Because what I would say is that if you're, let's say, owning Watkins right now in FPL, there's a genuine consideration to actually move into someone like Alvarez or Darwin on Game Week 14. If you choose to go with Alvarez, then of course that makes your team worse for Game Week 18. And I think a lot of the gain will be earned by owning Alvarez, owning Foden, or owning Guardiola and Haaland, of course. Players like Mbumo, Pinnock, and Flecken ahead of time and ahead of schedule. Because if you think about, for example, Brentford's fixture schedule, they actually have really good fixtures around Game Week 16 onwards. They have Sheffield United away, they have Aston Villa at home, Wolves at home, and then Crystal Palace away. Those 4 fixtures are very good defensive fixtures. So if you, let's say, own Turner and you have some money in the bank, that would be a great time and a great avenue to actually move away from someone like Turner and own Areola plus Flecken as a duo, before that blank game week in 18. So if you can make these moves, such as moving into, let's say, 5 Brentford and Man City players, you could actually improve the short-term value of your team because I don't think there are really any comparable upgrades. For example, Darwin is great. Other keepers are also good, but I think Flecken is actually probably one of the best keepers for that run that I just described. And of course, you'd be owning him for the double game week as well. So there's value there in game week 20. And when I think about it, when you're free hitting on game week 18, if you, let's say, own all these players, you're going to have a terrible team. So the idea is, in the short term, if you own Alvarez, you'll enjoy the benefit of owning such a great pick. You'll also enjoy the benefit of owning Mbumo without having to feel the pain in Game Week 18. And one of the suggested free hits that I would actually go for on Game Week 18 is as follows. The team on Game Week 18, if you are free hitting, is going to be Leno, because Fulham have actually a good fixture. I'd probably go with Cash if you can afford him by then. Trippier and Porro, a great backline for this week. In the midfield, it would be Son, Salah, Diaby, Maddison, Fernandes. And then in the front line, it would be Watkins and Wilson. Now, on the bench, you'll probably have actually players like maybe Lascelles or Botman, Castagne, and also Archer. And what's so nice about this fixture period is we probably want to have Newcastle players. We probably would own those Newcastle players. But actually, it's very hard here to own Diaby on this fixture. It's very hard here to own Watkins on this fixture if you already own Alvarez at that time. If you own, let's say, someone like Mbumo, you can't get someone like a Maddison as well around that fixture period. So what I quite like about this Game Week 18 free hit structure is it allows you to have the best team possible. Even Fernandes, for example, has a good fixture. You drop all your City assets, you drop all your Brentford assets, and you actually create a very good team that probably is going to have, around 8 to 10 points scored, just on average, right, than your default Man City and Brentford heavy team. And in 2 weeks' time on Game Week 20, if the double game week is to happen, you're going to also earn the net benefit of owning all these players, right, from Brentford and from Man City. So when I think about it, the value of the free hit is not just the free hit in this week where you can actually upgrade your team so much because you don't need to spend the budget on Haaland, you don't need to spend the budget on Alvarez, you don't need to spend the budget on any of the other picks that we've talked about so far. But you can also just get great value in the short term here with this free hit. But also you'd be benefiting from the double game week 20 team that you'll have, right? Which is going to be stronger than the rest of the field. Because if everyone carries 3 players onto their bench and maybe also a keeper, right, ahead of game week 20, they probably will have a bench that looks something like Haaland and Alvarez. And that's going to make sure that they only have one forward on free at 18, right? So that's a very, very weak structure. They're probably going to play a very, very poor 4-5-1 or maybe take a transfer out. But here, you get to keep Alvarez for the long term. You get to keep Haaland for the long term. And also, you probably get to safely exit out of Salah and Son and even Mbumo by game week 21. I think you can also carry one of those players that are heading towards AFCON and just keep them on the bench. You don't need to necessarily transfer out of all of these players. But the whole idea, of course, around this time period is that you're prepared to do so, and maybe you're best equipped and you get the short-term value as well. Because one of the things to think about is maybe Alvarez is a better pick after Watkins has this great Fulham fixture, right? After the Fulham fixture, when you move into Alvarez, he might actually be just more value for money than someone like Watkins, and you earn that short-term benefit as well. So that is the whole point of considering free hit 18. I personally think it's definitely a strategy that I'll be thinking about. I don't have a transfer this week in mind in terms of getting a City player, so I don't really have to get set into free hit 18 and sort of make sure that all my transfers fall into that sort of pathway. But this is an opportunity, an avenue to generally think about, if we get a confirmation over the next few weeks, how we start to build towards a free hit 18 draft and how we get the most value out of City and Brentford players without having to feel the pain of the blank game. We can actually making the most value out of it. So that's going to be the video in terms of free hit 18 strategy and why you should maybe consider it. Let me know what you guys think in terms of the actual strategy choice. I actually think, as I said, if we get the confirmation anytime soon, it's something that I will definitely probably be planning around. And I think I'm definitely someone who is a huge fan of Alvarez. So knowing that I will go into Alvarez, knowing that I'll go into Mbumo, and being happy as well to sort of move into Guardiola, or for example, someone like Walker as well, is sort of tempting me towards that direction if things get confirmed and if things get announced as we expect. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching, and also thank you so much to the members who continue to support the channel. Of course, I'm not working full time, and the member support is something that I'm very gracious of. And in general, if you guys could like and subscribe while you exit the video, I would really appreciate that. And see you guys on the next video, which will be the cheat sheet.